I was staring at a half-melted coffee cup in the break room when Wade's voice echoed down the hall, loud and self-congratulatory. He was toasting someone again, probably Kevin from sales or Jennifer from ops, whoever had just won Employee of the Month for presenting my compliance audit results like they'd invented data validation themselves. I'm Carl Peterson, by the way, 47 years old, and I've been holding this place together for 12 years now. I looked at that stained coffee cup and thought about mold, not because I wanted food poisoning, but because at least mold gets recognition in a biology textbook. Me? I sat 3 doors down from the corner office for over a decade, keeping Summit Financial Group's back-end systems running with the kind of precision that kept lawsuits out of our legal department's inbox. I wasn't flashy, didn't do the happy hour thing or volunteer for those ridiculous holiday photo shoots with the fake snow and budget Santa. But I got things done, fixed corrupted databases that would have cost us millions, built custom API bridges that nobody else could figure out. Streamlined compliance workflows so clean that legal called it magic before Wade made them stop using that word because it sounded unprofessional. And in all that time, nobody asked what I was building after hours. The shift started subtle. A sentence here. A look there. They'd smile when I walked into meetings, but stopped just short of actually inviting me to contribute. I became the guy you see but don't hear. A shadow with admin rights. Wade, my boss, was always nice enough. Called me dependable. When servers crashed or someone forgot to set up API rate limits and flooded our vendors with blank invoices, I'd step in, fix it in 20 minutes, and get a nod. Not a raise, not even a thank you, a nod. I stayed because I stupidly believed that doing good work would be enough, that someone would notice, that merit mattered. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Not there. The office was beige in every possible way. Beige walls, beige coffee. Beige people with beige ideas getting beige promotions. You know the type. People who get promoted for innovating a pivot table or suggesting a Slack bot that says happy birthday. Meanwhile, I was writing compliance logic at midnight because our third-party license checker hadn't been updated since the Obama administration. I remember offering an idea once in a team meeting. A lightweight app I'd started tinkering with at home, something that could flag licensing risks before they hit production. One click, instant visibility across all vendor contracts. Wade smiled that patronizing smile he probably practiced in the mirror. Said we weren't looking for extracurricular distractions. Told me to focus on what I did best, keeping things running quietly. So I did. Quietly, I built the app anyway. Look at 47, with 2 kids in college and a mortgage that doesn't care about my feelings. I couldn't afford to be reckless. But I also couldn't afford to keep betting my future on a company that treated me like office furniture. My daughter Emma was at Northwestern, my son Jake at Penn State. Do you know what out-of-state tuition costs these days? It's like buying a new car every semester. The divorce 3 years ago didn't make things easier. Not that Karen and I fought about money, but suddenly I was covering college expenses that used to be split 2 ways. Child support, insurance, the house payment on a place that felt too big with just me rattling around in it most weekends. I spent weekends refining the app, writing logic trees to account for international regulations, cross-referencing SEC documentation, running simulations. I even designed the UI myself. Clean, simple, no nonsense. Called it Compliance Guard Pro. At first, it was just a folder on my desktop. By month 6, it was functioning. By month 12, it was better than anything Summit was using internally. The real breakthrough came when I figured out the jurisdictional mapping. See, most compliance tools handle domestic regulations fine, but they fall apart when you're dealing with European data protection laws, Asian banking standards, and American financial reporting requirements all in the same transaction. It took me 4 months just to build the logic trees for cross-border compliance checking, and I said nothing. Not because I was scared, but because I knew how this place worked. If I demoed it, they'd either ignore it or worse, claim it. Rewrite history so Kevin from sales was suddenly the visionary and I was just the supporting technician who helped with the technical stuff. So I kept it off their network, logged every build date, stored everything in third-party cloud storage, wrote detailed commit messages. Built a folder labeled ownership documentation just in case someone got clever down the line. I documented every decision, every feature request that came from my own research, every late night when I chose to code instead of watch Netflix. I was quiet, but I wasn't stupid. At 47, you don't get many second chances in this industry. The young guys with computer science degrees from fancy schools get the benefit of the doubt. Guys like me, who learned programming in night school while working factory jobs, we have to be bulletproof. There's something surreal about being invisible in your own workplace, watching others take credit for fires you put out, smiling through meetings where someone suggests something you coded 6 months ago like it's a brand new breakthrough. But here's the thing about being overlooked for too long. You either fade away completely, or you learn to move without being seen. I chose the second option. And by the time anyone noticed I was building something, it was already too late to stop me. By the time the holiday party came around, the die was already cast. I just hadn't shown my hand yet. But first, let me tell you about the meeting that changed everything. Wade called an all-hands meeting 2 weeks before Christmas. Stood there like he was about to announce the cure for corporate bureaucracy. Pressed shirt, smug grin, coffee cup, with some motivational quote his assistant probably picked out. The whole leadership team was there, Jennifer from Ops looking important with her new tablet, Kevin from Sales checking his phone every 30 seconds like he was running the New York Stock Exchange. We're streamlining our focus, Wade said, like Moses coming down from the mountain with stone tablets. No more side projects, no external development. Internal builds only. Moving forward, all innovation happens here. In-house, I glanced around the table. Jerry Walsh from DevOps nodded like a bobblehead. Someone actually clapped. Scott Miller, our team lead, was scribbling notes like Wade was delivering the Gettysburg Address. I just sat there feeling my stomach knot up. 20 months, that's how long I'd been perfecting my app. Nights, weekends, lunch breaks. After fixing Wade's broken project dashboards and rebuilding audit logs that nobody else wanted to touch. After staying late to clean up database corruption that happened because someone thought it would be clever to run production updates on Friday afternoons. My app wasn't a side project, it was a life preserver I'd been building while they ignored the ship taking on water, so I raised my hand. Calm and steady. I've actually been working on something in that space. A compliance tool, lightweight, scalable. It can flag licensing exposure across multiple jurisdictions in under 3 seconds. I could demo it. The room went quiet, not the good kind of quiet where people are interested. The uncomfortable kind where everyone's suddenly very aware of their breathing. Wade didn't even blink. "Let's not waste resources," he said, flashing that rehearsed smile he used when delivering bad news. "I'm sure it's interesting, but that kind of tool wouldn't scale in our environment." He never asked what language it was built in, never asked what jurisdictions it covered, never asked how many vendors I'd tested it against, never asked who might want to use it. He didn't even look. Besides, he continued, warming to his theme, compliance isn't really about technology, it's about relationships, understanding the business context. You can't automate judgment. I wanted to laugh. This from a guy who'd never read a single SEC filing, who thought GDPR was a type of GPS system until his assistant printed out the Wikipedia page for him. But I just nodded and wrote down focus on core responsibilities in my notebook, like a good little employee. After the meeting, I sat in the parking garage for 15 minutes staring at the steering wheel. You ever have that moment when you realize someone's so used to overlooking you, they've become blind? Not just to your work, but to your potential. I wasn't angry anymore. It felt clinical, like watching a lab rat choose the wrong door over and over, certain it was being smart. Jennifer cornered me by the elevator later that day. "You really built something?" she asked, glancing around like we were discussing state secrets. "Yeah, is it good?" I thought about the 847 test cases I'd run, the simulated vendor contracts from 23 different countries, the edge cases I'd handled for mergers and acquisitions, subsidiary reporting, cross-border data transfer compliance. It's thorough. She lowered her voice. "Wade's been talking to some vendors about buying a compliance automation system. Budget's around $200K, that stung. They'd spend $200K on a vendor solution, but wouldn't spend 10 minutes looking at something I'd built for free. Classic corporate logic." Then, 3 days later, the best email of my life arrived. Rachel Foster from Legal had looped me in by mistake on some internal thread about IP policies. Just one line buried in corporate speak. Re Peterson's compliance app, MGMT uninterested. No patent filing required. Treat as external hobby project. 6 words changed everything. Treat as external hobby project. Translation, they'd officially declined to look, declined to claim ownership. If I walked, they couldn't touch a single line of code, not one function, not one variable. I stared at that email for a solid minute, then quietly archived it in a folder I labeled Freedom. I printed 3 copies, saved screenshots, backed it up to 2 different cloud services. At 47, you learn to document everything. A few minutes later, Wade stopped by my desk. "Great input in the meeting," he said. "Always good to know you're thinking about innovation." I smiled, always thinking, "Wade, just remember, we want that creative energy focused where it can do the most good for the team." He walked off completely unaware. He just handed me the cleanest exit in corporate history. Legal documentation that they'd explicitly waived any claim to my work. A paper trail showing they'd refused to even evaluate it. That night, I opened my laptop and saved the latest build as version 2.0, post-summit. Then I started researching buyers, not customers' buyers. Companies that acquired technology instead of building it internally. The research took weeks. I learned about due diligence, intellectual property valuation, market analysis. I studied acquisition announcements in the compliance space, figured out what buyers were paying for different types of software. I built financial models, competitive analyses, feature comparisons. See, that's the difference between being 47 and being 27. When you're young, you build something cool and hope someone notices. When you're my age, you build something valuable and make sure the right people know about it. I started reaching out to industry contacts. Guys I'd worked with at previous companies, people I'd met at conferences back when Summit used to send me to conferences. Nothing direct, just casual conversations about the compliance automation market, what problems companies were trying to solve, where they were spending money. And slowly, carefully, I started building a list of companies that might be interested in what I'd built. Companies that had budgets. Companies that understood the value of what I was offering. I wasn't looking for a job, I was looking for a buyer. The firm was called Pinnacle Tech Solutions. Clean office in downtown Chicago, no ego posters on the walls, and nobody tried to sell me on company culture when I walked in. Just 2 partners and a legal counsel who asked the right questions. The kind that told me they'd actually read compliance regulations instead of just talking about digital transformation. I'd done my homework on them too. Founded by 2 guys who'd sold their previous company to Oracle for $180 million. They specialized in acquiring and scaling B2B software in regulated industries. Banking, healthcare, financial services. They understood compliance wasn't sexy, but it was profitable. The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I'd told Wade I had a dental appointment. He didn't ask for details, probably assumed I was getting a routine cleaning. If only he knew I was about to clean house. I pulled up the demo on my laptop, ran a live simulation on mock vendor contracts from their own portfolio. I'd spent 3 days researching their client base, understanding exactly what compliance challenges they faced. In 4 seconds, Compliance Guard Pro flagged 7 licensing red zones and mapped jurisdictional risk categories across 4 continents. 2 clicks, clean visual output, actionable intelligence. They didn't lean back in their chairs. They leaned forward. "You built this alone?" Michael Torres, the senior partner, asked. "Evenings and weekends, over 20 months," I replied. David Williams, the other partner, was scrolling through the feature documentation I'd prepared, 50 pages of technical specs, use cases, competitive analysis. "This handles GDPR compliance, GDPR CCPA, SOX, Basel III, MiFID II, plus 14 other regulatory frameworks across 23 jurisdictions. It's designed to scale as new regulations emerge." Sarah Kim, their legal counsel, adjusted her glasses. "And your current employer?" I pulled out my documentation folder. The one I'd been building for months. Timestamps, independent build logs, cloud service receipts, the internal email thread where Summit explicitly waived interest. They declined to review it. Legal memo states it's treated as an external hobby project. "It's mine." Clean title. Long pause. Then Michael asked the question I'd been waiting for. What would it take to acquire this? I'd rehearsed this moment for weeks. Studied comparable acquisitions, analyzed their fund size, understood their typical deal structure. I wasn't going to undersell myself, but I also wasn't going to price myself out of reality. $52 million, I said, plus ongoing equity participation and technical leadership role. David whistled softly. "That's substantial. Let me show you why." I clicked to the market analysis I'd prepared. Similar tools in this space have sold for 15 to 80 million, but they're all narrow solutions. Single jurisdiction, single industry, single use case. This is the first unified platform that handles multi-jurisdictional compliance across industries. I pulled up customer validation data. I've been quietly beta testing with 3 firms over the past 6 months. Compliance consulting firm in Atlanta, hedge fund in Boston, multinational bank in London. Average time savings, 73%. Average risk reduction, 84%. Average cost savings, 2.3 million per year per client. Sarah was taking notes. Michael was staring at the financial projections I'd built. Conservative estimates showing 15 million in revenue by year 2, 45 million by year 4. The market's there, I continued. Global compliance software market is 34 billion and growing 12% annually. Current solutions are fragmented, outdated, built by companies that don't understand the actual compliance workflow. This isn't just software. It's institutional knowledge coded into a scalable platform. David leaned forward. You've been doing this while employed full-time nights, weekends, vacations? My employer made it clear they weren't interested in compliance innovation. Said I should focus on keeping their legacy systems running. I smiled slightly. So I did. But I also built the future on my own time. Timeline for decision, Sarah asked. I'm talking to 2 other firms next week. But you're my first choice because you understand regulated industries. This isn't a consumer app that needs marketing buzz. It's infrastructure software that needs strategic development. They agreed to call by Friday. The call came Thursday evening while I was helping Emma with her economics homework. Video call with all 3 of them, documents spread across their conference table. We want to move forward, Michael said. 52 million cash, plus 15% equity in the new entity we'll create to house the technology. You'll be CTO with full technical authority. 3-year commitment with significant upside participation. I kept my voice steady. Deal structure? 30 million at closing, 22 million in performance milestones over 18 months. Equity vests over 4 years with acceleration clauses. Sarah was reading from a term sheet. We handle all legal, regulatory, and market development. You handle technology and product roadmap. Emma looked up from her textbook. Dad, is everything okay? I muted the call. Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just work stuff. Back to the call. When can we start due diligence? Next Monday, if you're ready. The due diligence process took 6 weeks. Technical audits, code reviews, intellectual property verification, market validation studies. They brought in external consultants to verify my claims about performance, security, scalability. Every test confirmed what I already knew. I'd built something valuable. The legal team spent 3 weeks verifying that Summit had no claim to the technology. They found the email trail, confirmed the timestamps, validated my independent development process. Clean title, no encumbrances. By February, we had signed agreements. Compliance Guard Pro would operate under Pinnacle Compliance Solutions, a new entity created specifically for the acquisition. I retained 15% equity plus my 52 million payout. They provided infrastructure, legal support, sales team, and market access. It was the cleanest deal I'd ever seen. And I'd negotiated it while still fixing Wade's broken dashboard every Monday morning. Then I went back to Summit like nothing had happened. Same caucus, same button-down shirts, same invisible presence in meetings where people discussed innovation without innovating anything. But now I had a secret that was about to become very public, and Wade had no idea what was coming. Every morning for the next 3 months, I showed up at Summit at 8:15. Not early enough to look desperate, not late enough to seem disengaged. I fixed Wade's broken dashboard when he corrupted his reporting filters again. Stayed late one Thursday to help Scott push a security patch that Kevin would take credit for in Friday's team update. Through it all, I said nothing. No announcement, no hints, no changes in behavior. Same routine, same projects, same invisible presence in a building that never asked who was building what outside their walls. There's something almost peaceful about walking around a place that thinks it still owns your future while knowing it doesn't even own your past. Every time Wade made jokes about keeping innovation in-house, I just nodded. No need to correct him. Let him believe whatever made him comfortable. By then, Pinnacle's development team was already committing to my private repositories. Patent applications were filed and pending. The first pilot clients were lined up quietly. That compliance consultancy in Atlanta had signed a 2.3 million implementation contract. The hedge fund in Boston was beta testing the multi-jurisdictional features. a financial services company I'd pitched a year earlier, back when Summit didn't bother returning their phone calls, had committed to a full enterprise deployment. In the evenings, I'd log off Summit's VPN and switch to my personal setup. My world split neatly, past and future. One held my badge, the other held my name. And I wasn't rushing anything. Let them sleep. Let them think I was still theirs. Still dependable Carl, who'd never rock the boat. The best part about being overlooked is nobody notices when you stop waiting for recognition and start building your own future. By the time I walked into Summit's holiday party, everything was already decided. The conference room had been transformed with string lights and the same sad cheese trays they'd been recycling for 3 years. Someone had queued up a playlist that switched between classic rock and whatever the marketing intern thought counted as festive music. Nobody noticed me at first. Same black jacket I'd worn to company events since the Clinton administration. Hair combed the same way, no name tag, no guest. Just me, a glass of decent wine, and the quiet knowledge that I didn't need to pretend anymore. Wade was mid-toast when I found a spot near the back, next to the table where they'd arranged leftover company-branded fleece vests like corporate participation trophies. Tonight's about recognizing the people who went above and beyond, he said, holding up his glass like he was addressing the United Nations. The people who made Summit what it is today, the usual list. Kevin from sales, who discovered email templates like they were ancient scrolls. Jennifer from ops, who'd implemented a new filing system that mostly involved color-coded folders. Scott Miller got recognized for technical leadership, which meant he'd successfully delegated everything I'd built to people who took credit for understanding it. Polite applause, forced smiles, someone whistling like we were at a Little League game. My name didn't come up, not that I expected it to. But something about watching that annual performance made me realize I was completely done. Not angry, not disappointed, just done. I headed to the bar, ordered a whiskey. Neat. While I waited, Mark Morrison from accounting slid up beside me with that grin that always came with 3 beers and no social filter. "You still playing around with that compliance thing?" he asked, laughing like we were sharing an inside joke. I smiled. Took a sip. Not anymore. He laughed louder. "What?" It finally crashed. "I told you that thing was going nowhere. Should have shown it to Wade when you had the chance. Could have been part of something bigger." I set my glass down gently. "No, I sold it." The words weren't loud. I didn't make a scene, just clear enough for the air around us to shift. Enough for the bartender to pause mid-pour, enough for Wade, standing 6 feet away, basking in applause for Kevin's quarterly PowerPoint mastery, to turn his head. Mark blinked hard. "Wait, what?" "I sold it," I repeated, calm, matter of fact, like confirming the weather forecast. He stared, waiting for the punchline that wasn't coming. Behind him, Wade was walking over, his politician smile flickering like a dying light bulb. "Sold what?" Wade asked, voice tight, not curious, worried. I looked straight at him. "Compliance Guard Pro, the app you said wouldn't scale. How much?" The question came out sharper than he probably intended. 52 million. You could actually feel it. The silence didn't just fall. It dropped like an anchor into deep water. Mark made a choking sound that brought his beer up through his nose. His glass hit the table hard enough to splash. A few people nearby turned, unsure if someone was having a medical emergency. Wade's face went through several expressions in about 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, and finally something that looked like a man trying to solve calculus while drowning. "You're kidding," he said. Not a question, more like a prayer to whatever God protects middle managers from their own mistakes. I took another sip. Nope. Then, because the moment felt right. Contract was finalized last month. Public announcement goes live Monday. That's when the ripple started. Not dramatic, not theatrical. Just the quiet realization moving through the room like news of a distant earthquake. The woman who'd been fixing their broken systems for 12 years had been building the future 3 doors down from Wade's office. And they never saw it coming. Jennifer from ops was suddenly standing behind Dave, her tablet forgotten in her hand. 52 million, she whispered. That's the acquisition price. There's also equity participation and ongoing royalties. I wasn't bragging, just stating facts. Pinnacle Tech Solutions. They specialize in regulated industry software. Scott Miller had materialized from somewhere, still holding his technical leadership recognition plaque. But we never reviewed it. We never saw the code. You never asked to see the code. Wade was staring like I'd announced I was from another planet. You did this while working here nights and weekends. Personal equipment, independent development, clean IP documentation. Your legal department confirmed it in writing. I pulled out my phone, showed him the email from Rachel Foster. Right there, treat as external hobby project. Someone from legal had been mid-conversation across the room. I caught their sentence collapse into nothing. They'd heard it too. A guy from DevOps who'd never spoken to me outside of Jira tickets was suddenly pretending to remember my name. The room had gone from holiday party to wake. Wade looked like someone had just told him his house was built on a sinkhole. I finished my drink, set the glass down gently. No dramatic exit, no speech about what they'd missed. Just the weight of truth settling where small talk used to live. I'll clean out my desk Monday, I said quietly. Enjoy the rest of the party. By Monday morning, the press release was live. Pinnacle Tech Solutions acquires compliance automation platform. Not side project, not hobby app, platform, with my name right there as founder and CTO. At 47, with 2 kids who won't have student loan debt and a career that's finally in my own hands, I learned something important. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting so far ahead that getting even becomes irrelevant. They never saw me coming because they were too busy not seeing me at all. And by the time they looked up, I was already gone. Sometimes the biggest win comes not from fighting the system, but from quietly building something so valuable that the system becomes irrelevant. At 47, I learned that being overlooked isn't a weakness. It's camouflage that lets you build your future while others are busy protecting their present.